And at the beginning, I thought there was something wrong with me because I wasn't the individual who, would socialize as much or be out for as long as everyone else or speak up a lot in meetings or within brainstorming sessions in certain organizations. And it was only until I read the Bible for introverts, Susan Cain's Quiet, right, that I realized, okay, so I'm part of this wonderful community of individuals who call themselves introverts. And I remember looking online for classes or workshops that I could attend that helped introverts within the workplace, like, how to manage things such as networking, meetings, and other self-promoting activities. And I just couldn't find any. And so I spoke to who I now consider a friend, who ran the masterclasses for the Guardian newspaper, and pitched it to her like, hey, what about if I run a few masterclasses on how to thrive as an introvert in the workplace? And yeah, it started out as a trial, and then 80 years later, and and thousands of attendees later, it did pretty well. And that's when I realized, okay, so there's something here. There's definitely a need.
Hello and welcome to episode 224 of the Quiet and Strong podcast, especially for introverts. I'm your host, David Hall, and the creator of quietandstrong.com. This is a weekly podcast dedicated to understanding the strengths and needs of introverts, along with strategies for success. Introversion is not something to fix, but to be embraced. Normally, we will air each episode on a Monday. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite platform. Leave a review or a rating. That would mean a lot to me and help others find the show. Tell a friend about the podcast and help get the word out there that introversion is a beautiful thing. Richard Etienne is an award-winning personal brand and communication consultant with a passion for helping individuals and businesses thrive. A former official videographer for UK Prime Minister Theresa May, Richard now spends his time delivering workshops and presentations on introversion, leadership, and communication. Founder of the Introvert Space, a community interest company dedicated to empowering introverts in the workplace. Richard authors popular ebooks like Self-Promotion for Introverts. All right. Well, welcome to the Quiet and Strong podcast, Richard. Richard, it's so good to have you on today.
Thanks, David. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, and as I was saying to you, I've been aware of your great work for a while, and it's good to have you on today. But we're going to talk about the work you do around introversion. Tell us about yourself and your journey as an introvert to what you're doing now.
So I've always been a storyteller. I love this, just telling stories, listening to stories, and that essentially has been like the narrative arc of my career journey. So I started as a videographer or filmmaker for local businesses to tell the story of their company, and this was before YouTube, so this was for their websites. And then I made my way into civil service, public service life, and was the official videographer for the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting, or CHOG in 2018, which was the largest event the UK had hosted since the Olympics in 2012. And then from there became the videographer to the Prime Minister at the time, Theresa May, and other senior officials and so forth. So, and then moved into internal communication. So it was more about the telling the story of the collective family that is, the employees of within an organization. And throughout all of that, what did change and develop was my understanding of me as an individual. And at the beginning, I thought I was shy. I thought there was something wrong with me because I wasn't the individual who, would socialize as much or be out for as long as everyone else, or uh, speak up a lot in meetings or within brainstorming sessions in certain organizations. And it was only until I read that, essentially, what the Bible was, it in the Bible for introverts, Susan Cain's Quiet,
Yeah,
um,
absolutely.
right, that I realized, okay, so I'm part of this wonderful community of individuals who call themselves introverts. And I remember looking online for classes or workshops that I could attend, participate in, that helped introverts within the workplace, like, how to manage things such as networking, meetings, and other self-promoting activities. And I just couldn't find any. And so I spoke to who I now consider a friend, who ran the masterclasses for the Guardian newspaper, and pitched it to her like, hey, what about if I run a few masterclasses on how to thrive as an introvert in the workplace? And yeah, it started out as a trial, and then 80 years later, and and thousands of attendees later, it did pretty well. And that's when I realized, okay, so there's something here. There's definitely a need, and that's what's led me to where I am today.
Awesome. And yeah, so many people, myself included, thought something was wrong, you know? And I
Yeah,
too, I used to be shy, I used to lack confidence, but I realized it's because I didn't understand my introversion. I didn't understand that I was a deep thinker, that I often am gonna think first and then speak. But that's a gift. And if you don't understand that your extroverted friend is speaking out loud most of the time and you're processing internally, there could be some conflicts. And many, many guests like yourself have said that Susan Cain was definitely a big pivot point for them. And I like that you called it our Bible because it really did help a lot of people realize there is nothing wrong with you. You have some gifts.
exactly. And one of the greatest feelings is being reintroduced to yourself. And there are there are many ways to have that done, and one that's really worked for me as well is having mentors who are both more introverted and more extroverted, because they hold different mirrors to you, and help you to understand yourself in different ways, and reveal those inner strengths and qualities that you mentioned earlier, for sure.
Yeah. So you started doing workshops early on after kind of embracing your introversion, it sounds like.
I did, yeah. And it was what one thing that really came out was that a lot of people who attended, their biggest hurdle or obstacle at the time was speaking up in meetings. And I totally get it. I understand it, because meetings can seem like this competitive arena of egos and or job titles, and hierarchy and so forth, where it's about just being heard. It's not about actually contributing something meaningful, because sometimes silence is a good way to contribute as well. When a good point has been made and we've all agreed, let's move on. Like, we don't need to speak for speak's sake. And unfortunately, because of how the office can be extrovert favored, we then need to play the game in order to be heard, in order to get ahead, and to be noticed. And so, within these workshops, I often share certain tips on, how to even like cut in when someone's over, speaking for too long, or if you realize you're being avoided, certain words or phrases to not use, such as, oh, well, I'm no expert, but, like try to reduce self-deprecation. And so they're the workshops were, definitely wonderful. They've moved now to the London Standard newspaper, or this now it's just called the Standard, actually. And yeah, still, meetings is such a massive, massive topic, especially now we've moved into a more hybrid working world.
Yeah. So what tips do you have? How can we be heard as introverts in the meeting? And, I often say that it's a myth that we don't have much to say because we're always thinking. So we have a lot to say, but just we sometimes struggle in that meeting environment to share our ideas.
Indeed. So I tend to encourage my attendees to think of meetings as being much broader than before the start date, like before the start time and after it finishes. So before a meeting even begins, if you know based on the agenda or the topic that there is a particular point you would like to raise, before the meeting, reach out to the chair. Let that individual know, at this part of the meeting, I would like to raise X, Y, or Z. Because there's also something quite uplifting about being name checked or mentioned by the chair to actually bring something to the table. Because now everyone really has your attention. Another one that I remember putting in a blog for The Guardian was to practice name calling. And it's like, your listeners are probably thinking, oh my gosh, what do you mean? And there is so set the scene. Say this is an online, like a webinar, and you've tried all of the tips, right? You've typed in the chat, no one's responding. You've used emojis, you put your raised hands, all of these things, and no one's coming to you, or the individual is just talking. Instead of doing that age-old kind of apologetic interruption where it's like, sorry, 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 don't do that. Say the person's name. David, that was a great point. Let me just stop you there for a second because to add to that, or have you noticed, oh, David, I'd love to really just bring in, insert other person's name if you want to act as an ally to the quieter colleague. Because there's something I remember, obviously, many of us have heard of Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. And within that book, there was a line about how the sweetest sound to a person is the sound of their name. And I mean, yeah, it could be from childhood, when our parents used to call us or whatever, but or in schools when the teachers used to shout our name, call our names to get our attention. But it just seems to work. It's not rude. It acknowledges the person's presence, but also makes your presence known. So if you're the person who wishes to interject, that's one way. But if you wish to interject as an ally for someone else, again, that's a useful tip. But those are two ones that definitely come to mind that have been quite effective for a lot of people.
Yeah, yeah, that's a classic book, and I love that piece of it because it's so true. We do like to hear the sound of our names. I've never heard a strategy like that, so I love that, Richard. It's a great one. And so it helps it not seem rude. It helps you be heard. That's great.
Thank you.
Other strategies for, meetings and beyond, like just being visible at work?
So there is the classic networking, hey, coffee catch ups and the rest of it. Now, again, going back to the whole hybrid work model that we have, for a lot of introverts, we're going to actually create some sort of networking opportunity. It might not come natural. It is important to, have a bank of names or individuals that you would like to speak to, and then just sending them a very quick 15-minute, meeting invite to talk about maybe your current workload and things that you are have achieved and or any ideas you may have towards a strategy that that individual is working towards, because what you are trying to do is build connections. It's not about ultimately selling. We're not salespeople. We are trying to, yeah, build connections, build a network to show our relevance, show our value, but then also be mutually beneficial. Like, how can we support said individual or their teams as well? So, I often do that. I definitely go out. I mean, this is how you and I met, and this is how it works, right? Like, it's wonderful. And then from this podcast, who knows where else other connections can be made as well. So, that's definitely one. And then it is about, again, the more social kind of engagement. So most industries have conferences, events that's specific to that particular topic. Could you again attend one of those? And this is really, really useful again for that hybrid environment, because if one doesn't have an office space to go to, or it's, they don't want to go to the office, that's also a personal choice. If you have that freedom, there are events where you can have so many of these influential individuals in the same place at the same time, to then save you having to, if you don't want to do the coffee catch ups, all of the time, you don't have time for that. because of your own personal commitments or otherwise or choice. So I think most of my tips come from, or the core of it is building connections, getting your name out there, because I talk a lot about personal brand and how your one's personal brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. So how can you positively influence those words said about you? So number one, they're correct, first of all, but also number two, it provides increased opportunities for you. So yeah, those are two things that definitely come to mind.
Yeah, and we regularly bust myths on this show, and a myth that we regularly bust is that introverts don't like people, but of course, we absolutely need connection. But what you describe is we're going to connect in different ways. We're going to thrive more on connecting one-on-one and building our network that way. In the big group, in the typical traditional networking event, do you have any tips for that?
I mean, oof, a couple that come to mind for sure is setting yourself a target. Now, my whole thing, I remember saying, look, this is when business cards were a thing. I don't know if people do business cards much anymore, but if I leave with one good business card, that is, I have more than I had before before I left the office, left the house or whatnot. So yeah, the target thing, it doesn't have to be business cards. It could be just I want to talk to three new people, because what that does is after a while you actually forget that it's a target. It is that element of comfort that I often talk about. It's not stepping outside of it, it's just expanding your comfort zone. And to your point, we do like people. And once we do get into that flow and swing of things, we will stay there until our energy gets to a point where we need to leave. And that's all it is. Personality, as we often say on your podcast, is about energy levels. It's not about whether one's shy or he doesn't like people. So target setting is really important to to me, and I hope it's useful for others. And but then also clarity of message. Are you clear and concise about what value you bring? Because unfortunately, people people will often ask you what you do rather than like how are you, or those type of things, right? So because of that, we need to have that answer ready to go. And the easy response to what do you do is just saying your job title, but your job title is not what you do. It's I don't know, it's like it's how what you do is labeled. But for example, with being the videographer to the Prime Minister, I mean, yes, that is quite does what it says on the tin. But actually, what I do is I help to make the Prime Minister more relevant to her electorate through visual storytelling. And it's like, oh, what? Wow, okay. So what do you do here? Well, like I bring her core values to life through this medium, that medium, and for this audience, etc., etc. So your job title is not the thing that you do. So yeah, have a target of individuals that you'd like to speak to, but then also prepare that statement or that story for what it is you actually do.
Yeah, I love that. And go with the goal, like you're saying, go with the target. And if you make a good connection or two, mission accomplished.
There you go.
Richard, you said something else, and I actually heard you say this recently on a podcast. There's talk about comfort zone and getting out of it, right? But often, if we just get out of it, then the next time we're going to have to get out of it again and over and over. But you said, and I've said this before too, it's not getting out of it, it's stretching it or expanding it. Talk more about that.
So we do things better when we are comfortable. I often use the example of James Bond. When we watch his films, what's the way he introduces himself, right? The name's Bond, James Bond. Now, when he says that, the whole cinema doesn't erupt into laughter. Why? Because the guy says it in a very comfortable and assured way. This guy is confident. If I went up to someone or someone came up to me, asked me my name, and I said, the name's Etienne, Richard Etienne, they might think something's a bit weird.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? So it's important to be comfortable when we are trying new things. So how can we make it so? So for example, public speaking is often labeled as a very huge fear. And I have said this on a few occasions, and I will keep saying it. Start small, expand. So if it's a case of filming some videos and then putting them onto social media, you only had to talk to your phone or whatever camera lens you have. And then webinars, again, it's you're just looking at a little green dot at the top of your laptop screen, for example. You can turn everyone else's cameras off. Then you can go into a studio, it's just a handful of individuals and a camera and so forth. And before you know it, you're on stage on a panel, for example, speaking to hundreds of individuals. But you have maintained that comfort level all the way while building confidence in order to achieve your goal. So yeah, that's what I mean by that.
Yeah. And what have you learned about public speaking as an introvert?
That you I definitely need to leave adequate space after to recharge. And it's quite difficult because you're an amazing orator, David. So this is what will happen. You will give a talk, you'll step off the stage, people want to congratulate you. They want to understand a bit more. They want your context. Da, 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 da. So keep that in mind and preserve enough energy for those conversations. Don't leave it all out on the on the stage or on the platform. Keep that in mind. But then also, yeah, just yeah, bear that in mind. Maybe even let the organizers know that you need a quiet room or somewhere to just to go and like gather your thoughts before going on to the stage or platform or doing what you need to do before I do my masterclasses online with the standard and previously with the Guardian, they'd want to do a sound check, right? So usually it's like 15 minutes before the start. I would ask to do the sound check half an hour, I mean, sometimes even 45 minutes before the start. So we can get that out of the way. And then I have 30 minutes or so to do what I need to do to just get ready and breathe and then begin. So it's about intentionally creating spaces for that energy replenish or generating or just it is about focusing on that. That's like the biggest tip I would give for that.
Yeah, and definitely technology can go bad, can go wrong, and you want to have some time to troubleshoot anything. But then I like how you put it, it's not just that, it's you're getting in the right headspace for your speech and then planning what's after. And of course, people want to talk to you, you need to do that. But then, when are you going to give yourself a break is important to plan out too.
Indeed, indeed. And yeah, I always feel much better for it. So I hope it's helpful for our listeners.
Yeah. And of course, you're a storyteller. That's such an important part of public speaking. How can people, introverts especially, bring more storytelling into their speeches, and why is it important?
So the way to do it is actually to be a good listener and hear what is important to others because that is what you can then draw upon when telling your stories. Like I will never tell you the type of story that will work for individuals. I don't have the formula for that. But as long as it is relevant, it's from a place of authenticity, it should work. And that's why it's quite often if you make the stories about yourself, you don't have to be incredibly vulnerable. For example, this evening I'm going to an event where I have 5 minutes to tell a story about myself, and I will open it by simply saying, I realized the other day that there's a combination of three words in the English dictionary that have been said to me more times than any other throughout my entire life. And I hope at that point people are like, wait, what? Tell me more. And like the whole purpose of that is to, yeah, get one's attention and then to kind of put that narrative thread across that keeps people engaged. And then, I end with a reminder of what those words are and how relevant it can be to them. So, yeah, be a good listener. Hear what matters to other people. Make it relevant. Make it authentic. There was a quote from Franklin D. Roosevelt, who once said about public speaking, be sincere, be concise, be seated. I was like, yeah. Because you don't want to do a war and peace level novel. It's just about hitting the right touch points so that an individual can take in the information that you are sharing in a way that is easy to digest.
Yeah. If an introvert feels like they struggle with storytelling, can they get better at it?
I believe so with many things, practice, but also watching and again listening to others. There are, yes, we spoke about Susan Cain's book, but I actually found out about her because of her TED Talk, which has been seen with tens of millions of times. I don't even know the numbers now, but obviously TED is wonderful, right? Like speakers aren't allowed any more than something like 15 or something like that minutes to share their story because of what I mentioned a bit earlier. And so yeah, observing how others do it, because there will be, I wouldn't say a formula, but most good talks or stories start with a thought-provoking question, a stat, some sort of cliffhangery, yeah, statement, a bit like what I mentioned earlier. There are probably listeners still thinking, what are those three words this guy has been said to this guy? And so it's when you see enough great speakers do their thing, great storytellers do their thing, you do eventually kind of work out, okay, it's usually this long. It starts in this type of way. There's a bit of conflict. All great stories have conflict, we're told. And it's true, I guess, because yeah, like just like a rom-com, like classic. Like is yes, there's comedy, yes, there's romance, but there's always a bit of conflict that helps to draw the emotion and keep you going. So yeah, there will be elements that you will notice as an introvert. And because we are really good at observing and we have the ability to, yeah, deep things, consideration, it will come. It's not about overthinking, and we are we are the pioneers of that.
Yes.
But if we trust our process, then we'll be fine. And actually, those three words are, yeah, you'll be fine. I mean, technically it's four, but like, yeah.
Awesome. You said that Susan Cain's book was instrumental for you. What what do you share with people when they need to do some self-awareness work? How do they do that? How do they figure out their strengths and their needs?
So I would encourage them to ask those close to them who they trust to describe them in three words, or another thing they could ask them is, can you tell me what I do? Because then you get to see how the world sees you. Then you can write down how you want the world to see you if it doesn't match up with what you're told. And then you can go online and look for whether it's courses, videos, books, etc., that helps you to basically bridge that gap. That is probably the most straightforward way I would. Yeah, that's kind of it really. Like I, I could keep going on, David, but it's yeah, listen to others, then listen to yourself, and then find a way to bridge the gap.
Awesome. And what's a strength that you have because you're an introvert?
Patience, I think. I don't often hear this one a lot, but I do. Yeah, I am quite patient with myself. I may want to come up with a solution to a problem, and it can be quite easy to become frustrated, annoyed, or bring disbelief. Like maybe there is no solution. But I am patient with myself. I am patient with others because it could take a while for another individual to, okay, in basic, like for conversations, get to the point. Or in much broader circumstances, to build a connection with said individual. Like there are individuals who have walls, barriers, and it can be quite difficult for us as introverts, or definitely for myself anyway, to connect with an individual who isn't authentic and wants to wear a mask behave in a way that they think leadership should be portrayed. It's like, no, like be you. But I understand how the majority of the world, the corporate world works, and I understand the pressures that individuals face to be a particular way or to behave a particular way. And so yeah, I am patient with people, I'm patient with myself, and I am patient with processes. This is how things are for a while. I am patient with that, and I will do my best to to navigate the system until I either am comfortable with it or I can change it.
Yeah. I don't know that I've heard that one yet. And it's awesome because, as introverts, we're internal processors. And, sometimes I think of things quickly, but more often with ideas, I take some time and it's better. And I think, yeah, it's if I had rushed that decision, it wouldn't have been as good, you know? So it could be for process, thinking of something in which people can get very impatient with us sometimes. Or it could just be in conversation where you need a minute to think because your brain is processing, and like I said, introverts tend to think out loud, and extroverts we're processing internally. So some patience to let our brilliant minds work is very important. I love that.
Thank you. Yeah, my father often said, haste makes waste. Not in all things, but I do like that as a limerick.
Yeah. So tell us this, what is the introvert space?
The introvert space, oh, it's a hub, a community for introverts to access the tools and resources they need in order to thrive in an extrovert favored working environment. And it's also a place that institutions, organizations, whether educational, workplace based, can come to understand how to make their place of work or place of education more inclusive for introverts, and so that it has that equity of access and inclusion for all personality styles.
Yeah. And what can we find on your website? I saw some great resources there.
Thank you, David. Yeah, so there are three, I would say three, no, free to download non-cost ebooks that range from self-promotion for teachers in lower grade schools on how to make their classroom environments more inclusive for introverted pupils. I've recently released a toolkit for the inclusive management of introverts, or TIMI, and that's focus towards HR professionals, people managers, on how to make both the recruitment and retention elements of their work process more inclusive. I mean, just for example, onboarding training, like onboarding training has wonderful tips for all sorts of like protective characteristics, which it should do, whether it's disability awareness, gender equity, you know, racial inclusion, and all the rest of it. Wonderful. But the one thing it doesn't have is anything to do with personality. And like we all have a personality, unless a scientist tells me otherwise. And so it's simple, small changes that can make such a big difference. And this is what a lot of the resources on my website provide, and there's helpful videos and other things as well, because we all consume information in different ways.
Yeah, and we are definitely diverse by our personalities, and I've learned that they come very natural to us. We don't choose them, but we can learn to embrace them. But like you're saying, it's often overlooked. We still, it's 2025 and we still don't understand our unique personalities that would come to us naturally.
That's so true. And I remember during COVID lockdowns, it's only probably by lockdown season two that individuals were going, wait a minute, why am I like feeling stressed in this house? Oh, it's because I need connection. I'm an extrovert. Oh my God, I miss people. And I need these people to give me energy. And on the flip side, introverts were like, oh my God, like I didn't realize that I just needed a few days alone or at home or whatever in my own space. to be able to work in a way that was more comfortable for me. I had space to recharge or to protect myself from mass energy depletion. That conversation was always background before, and it was only really raised out of curiosity. But then, yeah, it just suddenly became something that was front page. And I'm sure you, David, I know I was like approached by quite a few individuals, and like the questions increased, and it was wonderful. But you're right, we're in 2025, and the pace of change is still slow. It's not quick enough. It's moving, but not at the pace that is necessary for adequate change.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I definitely think that introverts handled the lockdowns better, but this is where the podcast was born because people were also just thinking, oh, introverts just love this. And definitely, I knew some very lonely introverts out there. We need connection. It looks different often, but we need it. And I'm home. My wife has always worked from home. So now we're in her space, me and my three kids. It's a stressful time. It wasn't all just great being an introvert, being at home. So we did learn a lot from it for sure.
Indeed, indeed. I hope life is less stressful now.
Yeah, yeah,
For
yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah, for sure. For sure. What you were talking about branding, expand a little bit more about on that. Like, what is our branding and how do we do that as an introvert?
Yeah, so I often mention it's what people say about you when you're not in the room. And when are we most not in the room? It's usually online. So I often encourage people to put their name into, a search engine. Now, if you have a very popular name, it might be difficult. So just add, your job title or something that will just differentiate you from the others who share your name and see what comes up. And I often encourage people to do it on private browsing mode or incognito because then you get rid of the caches and the rest of it and you get to see you as the world does. And then you get to go, huh, okay. So if I'm applying for a role or if I've recently networked with someone, what are they going to do most likely? It is put my name into a search engine. And so this is what comes up. Do I like what I see? What needs to change, if anything? And, click on images. What images are there? So that's quite important. So for the parts of our personal brand that we can fix or change, we should. And they are simply, making sure your LinkedIn profile, if you have one, is up to date. You have some form of a personal statement, and that it contains words that when people put them into the search part of LinkedIn, your name comes up, and so forth. So and there's recommendations there. Do you have any recommendations? Have you recently completed something, a project or a talk or something for someone? If so, reach out to them, ask them for a recommendation. They're more likely to do it, especially soon afterwards, and in doing kind as well. So it's just about creating that narrative where we can, because of course there'll be elements that will be difficult or yeah, I guess impossible. But yeah, just focus on what we can change. So yeah, give it a go. Do some incognito browsing of yourself, see what's out there, and then work to get it into the shape that you want it to be in.
Yeah. Do you have any other tips using LinkedIn?
So our LinkedIn URL, so the bit at the top, I know a lot of people often put that in their email signatures or their resumes, CVs. If it has your name and a whole bunch of numbers at the end and it's all a bit messy, if you just type into, Google or something, tidy my LinkedIn URL, it will give you the first result it's always correct. And it will take you to a place where you can tidy it so it just says linkedin.com/ your name. Obviously, if you have a popular name, you may have to add something like, I don't know, maybe your company or something just to make it unique to you. But there are lots of nice little tips where you can do that. And my ebook self-promotion for introverts on my website is a great place to go to get some additional tips.
Awesome. And Richard, how do you manage your energy as an introvert? What have you learned about that?
That it's not about sitting on my house in my house by myself. It's not about that. Like, yes, there'll be moments where I could do that, play some video games, read a book, whatever, play piano. But actually, it's being with individuals or the small groups of people who give me joy, and they are like my energy charges. It's again, there are misconceptions about introverts and how we recharge because look, yeah, you have a wife, you're not going to be like, no, go away, go on holiday for a weekend while I need to recharge. No, I'm sure you energize each other, and it's a wonderful feeling. So yeah, that's definitely one thing I've learned about myself that many people may find surprising about introverts.
Yeah, and it's funny that you say that because she is at least one person that doesn't drain me, but I get energy from. Now, if she was here, I don't know if she would say I didn't drain her. I'm not sure about that, but that's the thing. It's like it's not it's we can get energy with the right conversations and the right people. It's when we're in spaces that, we're straining to think about things and, we're not being able to think. And also we love conversation, but we want to go deep. We don't want to stay
Mhm.
in the shallow for too long. That's what's draining is when we're in the shallow and talking about the weather or whatever, and it's just going on and on and on where we want to get to deep kind of topics that are interesting to us.
See, it goes back to that patience, David. I was like, we will
Yeah,
be able
yeah,
to have conversations.
yeah, yeah, for sure. Richard, this has been a wonderful conversation. Is there anything else that you want to add today?
Oh, wow. Thank you, David, first of all. It really has. I really am enjoying this. And what I want to add, I think I would like to speak to the younger introverts that are listening in and those who feel that they need to change themselves or the way they behave in order to get to that place that they desire. And I would say to them, don't try to be anyone else. Just be you, be authentic, do the hard work that you know you were going to do. Because if you are passionate, dedicated, and patient, it will be yours.
Yeah, well said. Well said. Be authentic. Don't try to fake anything. I definitely did that for far too long. So yes, let's start younger, getting people to understand who they are and how to be their authentic selves, bring their gifts to the world. I love that.
Thank you.
And of course, Richard, where can people find out more about the work you do?
Indeed. So yeah, if you head over to the introvertspace.com, you'll find all of the resources that I mentioned earlier. Also, if you just look me up on LinkedIn, Richard Etienne, I should be the first one after all the stuff I've been saying. And yeah, feel free to reach out to me and yeah, let's get talking.
All right, thanks again.
Thanks, David.
Thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate you. I hope you take the time to explore other episodes and learn from other amazing guests. Remember, if you're interested in getting to know yourself better, there is now a free Type Finder personality assessment on the Quiet and Strong website. This free assessment will give you a brief report, including the four-letter Myers-Briggs code. I'll add a link in the show notes. And I'd love to connect with you. Reach out at david@quietandstrong.com or check out the quietandstrong.com website, which includes blog posts and links to social media for Quiet and Strong and much more. Send me topics or guests you would like to see on the show. So many great things about being an introvert, and so we need those to be understood. Get to know your introverted strengths and needs and be strong.